Ambassador Eth had lived for 347 cycles. In all that time, he had never heard a sound like this. The transmission played through the council chamber, and every being present fell silent. It was not words. It was not a message. It was screaming. The screaming of millions. The holographic display showed Minor, a beautiful world of purple forests and silver oceans. They had built their colony there over 2,000 cycles ago. 12 billion souls called it home. Artists and scientists, teachers and farmers, children who had never known war. Now the planet burned. Eth's bioluminescent skin flickered with colors of grief as he watched the feed. Great clouds of black smoke rose from the cities. The forests were gone, replaced by something that moved like a living carpet across the land. The swarm had arrived, and they were hungry. "How long ago did this begin?" asked High Counselor N, her voice barely a whisper. 6 rotations, Eth answered. "We lost contact with the surface defense grid first, then the orbital stations went dark. By the time we received this transmission, the swarm had already consumed the northern continent." The chamber held representatives from 47 species. The Galactic Compact had maintained peace among the stars for over 10,000 cycles. They had treaties and trade agreements. They had cultural exchange programs and shared scientific research. What they did not have was an army capable of stopping the swarm was ancient, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. They moved from world to world like a plague, consuming everything in their path. Their bodies were chitin and hunger. Their minds were linked in a vast network controlled by a consciousness so alien that no species had ever successfully communicated with it. They did not negotiate. They did not make treaties. They only fed. "We must send relief ships," said Ambassador of the Methane Collective. His gaseous form swirled with agitation inside his containment suit. "Evacuate who we can." "To what end?" Eth asked bitterly. "Our ships are fast, but the swarm is faster. Any vessel that enters that system will be swarmed within hours. We would only be sending more food to the enemy." "Then what do you propose?" demanded Representative Al of the Silicon Mines. "That we do nothing, that we watch 12 billion die." Eth closed his 4 eyes. He had been an ambassador for 200 cycles. He had negotiated peace between species that had been at war for generations. He had helped build bridges across the vast distances of space. But now, faced with the death of his people, he could think of only one option. And it terrified him. "There is one species we have not asked for help," he said slowly. "One member of our galaxy that we have deliberately kept at a distance." The chamber went very quiet. "You cannot be serious," High Counselor N said. "They are quarantined for good reason. They are dangerous beyond measure." "They are killing my people right now," Eth replied. "Every hour we debate, another city falls. Another million lives are consumed. The humans may be dangerous, yes, but the swarm is already here. What more do we have to lose?" The Galactic Compact had discovered humanity 300 cycles ago. The first contact team had approached Earth with the standard greeting protocols, expecting to find another species ready to join the great community of civilizations. What they found instead had shocked them to their core. Earth was a nightmare. The planet had a gravity that would crush most compact species. Its atmosphere was a corrosive mix of nitrogen and oxygen. The temperature swings between seasons would kill any within days. And everywhere, on every continent and in every ocean, life competed in a brutal struggle for survival. The humans themselves were the most terrifying thing of all. They were persistence predators, a species that had evolved to chase their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Their bodies could heal from wounds that would kill other beings. They could survive the loss of limbs, the failure of organs, the most extreme conditions imaginable. They felt pain but continued fighting anyway. They experienced fear but did not let it stop them. And they were violent beyond comprehension. The first contact team had reviewed human history and fled in horror. Wars that killed millions, weapons designed to cause maximum suffering, a species that had split the atom not to power their cities but to destroy them. They had poisoned their own world, hunted their own kind, and somehow continued to thrive despite every obstacle. The Galactic Compact had voted unanimously to quarantine the Sol system. Humanity was too dangerous to integrate. They were confined to their home system with a warning beacon at every jump point. Do not enter. Species. Extreme caution advised. For 300 cycles that quarantine had held. The humans had developed faster-than-light travel on their own, but they had respected the boundaries set for them. They watched the galaxy from the edge, waiting for the day they would be accepted. That day had never come. Now, Eth was about to do something no ambassador had ever done. He was going to ask them for help. The Council will not approve this, High Counselor, and warned. If you contact the humans, you do so against our wishes. Then let it be on my head, Eth said. I will not watch my people die while we debate protocol. The humans have ships, they have weapons, and from everything I have read about them, they have something else we lack. What is that? Asked Representative Al. Eth looked at the burning world on the display. They know how to fight. The monitoring station Serenity's watch hung in orbit around a neutron star at the edge of compact space. It was the closest outpost to the Sol system, maintained primarily to watch the quarantine zone and report any human activity. For 300 cycles, those reports had been the same. The humans remained in their system. The quarantine held. No action required. Eth arrived at the station 12 hours after leaving the council chamber. He had not slept. He had not eaten. Every moment that passed was another moment his people suffered. The station commander, unnamed, met him at the docking bay with confusion in her glowing skin. Ambassador, this is unexpected, she said. We received no advance notice of your arrival. This visit is not official, Eth replied. I need access to your long-range communication array. Of course, but may I ask why? Eth paused, was young, barely 100 cycles old. She had probably never even seen a human. To her, they were just stories. Monsters used to frighten children, the who lurked at the edge of civilized space. I am going to send a message to Sol system, he said. I am going to ask the humans for help. Bioluminescence flickered through a dozen colors before settling on pale white, the expression of shock. Ambassador, the quarantine. The quarantine means nothing if our species is extinct, Eth interrupted. They are consuming minor as we speak. The Compact has no fleet capable of stopping them. No one does, except perhaps the humans. But how do you know they will help? They have every reason to hate us. We locked them in their own system for 3 centuries. Eth had thought about this during the long journey to the station. It was true that humanity had every right to refuse. The Compact had treated them like dangerous animals, caged and feared. Why should they risk their lives for species that had rejected them? I do not know if they will help, he admitted, but I know that I must ask. My conscience demands it. If they refuse, then at least I will have tried. If they agree. He trailed off, uncertain what would happen then. Led him to the communication center. It was a small room filled with equipment designed to monitor the quarantine zone. Eth sat at the main console and began composing his message. He kept it simple. He did not know how much the humans knew about galactic events. He did not know if they would even understand the threat. The message was short. A set of coordinates, a description of the enemy, and one word at the end, a word that felt strange coming from an ambassador who had spent 2 centuries as a proud representative of his people. Please. He transmitted the message on the universal distress frequency. Any ship within range would receive it, including, he hoped, the humans. Then he waited. Hours passed, brought him food that he did not eat, Other station staff came and went, their bioluminescence showing curiosity and fear in equal measure. Word had spread about what the ambassador was doing. Some thought he was brave. Others thought he was mad. Most simply did not know what to think. Eth watched the communication display, hopping for a response. Any response. Even a rejection would be better than silence. At least then he would know that his message had been received. When the reply finally came, it was not what he expected. The display flickered. Static filled the screen, and then a face appeared. It was a human face, the first Eth had ever seen outside of historical records. The creature was female, with dark hair pulled back from her features and eyes that seemed to look right through the camera into Eth's soul. She wore a uniform of some kind, black with silver markings on the shoulders. "This is Admiral of the Terran Republic Navy," the human said. Her voice was calm, almost flat. "We received your distress signal. Identify yourself." Eth's hearts beat rapidly in his chest, 4 of them all racing with a mixture of hope and fear. "I am Ambassador Eth of the. A colony world of my people is under attack. The enemy is the Swarm. They have already killed billions. We have no way to stop them." The human admiral did not react visibly. Her expression remained unchanged. "The Swarm. I've read about them in the compact databases we've intercepted over the years. Locust-like species, consumes organic matter, controlled by a hive mind." "Yes," Eth said. "They are unstoppable. No fleet in the compact has ever survived an engagement with them." "And yet you're asking us for help." A slight smile crossed the admiral's face. It was not a warm smile. It was sharp like a blade. "The species you've kept locked in our home system for 300 years. Eth felt shame burn through his body. His bioluminescence flickered red. "I know we have no right to ask. The compact treated your people terribly, but I am desperate, Admiral. My people are dying. I have nowhere else to turn." The Admiral studied him for a long moment. Her eyes, they were brown, Eth noticed. The color of Earth's soil seemed to be measuring him, judging him. "How many are on that colony?" she asked. 12 billion, perhaps fewer now. The Swarm consumes quickly." 12 billion. The Admiral repeated the number slowly. "That's a lot of people." "It is, and they are innocent. They have done nothing to deserve this fate. Many of them are children, Admiral, young ones who have never harmed anyone." Something changed in the Admiral's expression. It was subtle, just a slight tightening around the eyes, but Eth caught it. He had spent 2 centuries reading the body language of dozens of species. He knew when he had struck a nerve. "Children," the Admiral said. "The Swarm is killing children." "Yes." Silence stretched between them. The communication link hummed with static. Eth wanted to say more, to plead his case further, but something told him to wait. The human was thinking, calculating, making a decision that would affect billions of lives. Finally, Admiral spoke again. "Ambassador, I'm going to be honest with you. My people have been watching the compact from our little cage for 3 centuries. We've seen you build your utopia while we were left out in the cold. A lot of humans are angry about that. A lot of them think we should let the galaxy burn for how you treated us." Eth's heart sank. This was the rejection he had feared. The humans were going to refuse, and his people would die because of decisions made centuries before he was born. But the Admiral was not finished. "However," she continued, "I'm not one of those humans. Neither is my crew. We joined the Navy to protect people, all people. And if there are children dying on that world—" She paused, and for just a moment her mask of calm slipped. Eth saw something beneath it. Anger, cold, focused anger. "Then we're going to do something about it." Hope surged through Eth's body. His bioluminescence shifted to bright gold. "You will help us." "I'm mobilizing a response fleet as we speak. 12 ships. They're the best we have. We can be at your colony world in 3 standard days." 12 ships. Eth could not hide his concern. "Admiral, the Swarm numbers in the trillions. 12 ships will be enough." The admiral cut him off with absolute certainty. "Ambassador, you called us. You locked us away because you were afraid of what we could do. Well, now you're going to see exactly what that means." She leaned forward, and her smile returned. That sharp, dangerous smile that made Eth understand why his ancestors had been so afraid. "Tell your council that the humans are coming. Tell the swarm too if you can reach them. And tell them this: we do not negotiate with species that eat children. We do not accept surrender from creatures that have shown no mercy. We are coming to that world and we are going to end this, one way or another." The transmission ended. Eth sat in the communications center for a long time, staring at the blank screen. He had done it. He had asked them for help, and against all expectations, they had agreed. But as he processed the conversation, he realized something that made his bioluminescence flicker with unease. The Admiral had not promised to save Minor. She had not promised to protect the. She had promised to end the threat. And the look in her eyes when she said it. Eth had seen many things in his long life. He had watched stars born and die. He had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. He had negotiated with beings so alien that communication required years of careful study. But he had never seen anything like the look in Admiral's eyes. It was not hatred. It was not anger, though anger was part of it. It was something deeper, something primal. It was the look of a predator that had just spotted its prey. They had stories about the tales told to frighten children, warnings passed down through generations. Do not wake the humans. Do not anger the monsters from the heavy world. They are not like us. They do not think like us. They are built for war in ways we cannot comprehend. Eth had always thought those stories were exaggerated, products of fear and ignorance. The humans were dangerous, yes, but surely they were still rational beings. Surely they could be understood. Now he was not so sure. He sent a message to the Compact Council informing them of his actions. He expected outrage, condemnation, perhaps even arrest. He did not care. His people were dying and help was on the way. 3 days later, when the human fleet arrived at Minor, Eth finally understood what his ancestors had feared. They had been wrong about the. They had thought the quarantine was to protect the galaxy from human aggression. They had thought the warning beacons were about keeping a dangerous species contained. They had been fools. The warning was not about what the humans might do. It was about what would happen when they were finally let loose. Ambassador Eth watched the human ships tear into above his dying world, and he felt something he had not felt in 300 cycles. Hope. Cold, terrible, beautiful hope. They had answered the call, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The orbital shelter Sanctuary 7 held 40,000 survivors. They had been floating above their dying world for 6 days, watching helplessly as everything they loved was consumed below. The shelter's life support systems were running at maximum capacity. Food was running low. Hope had run out days ago. Elder pressed her face against the observation port and watched the surface of Minor burn. She was 400 cycles old, one of the oldest alive. She had seen her world grow from a small colony into a thriving civilization. She had watched her children and build lives there. Now she watched it all turn to ash. The swarm moved like a living shadow across the continents. From orbit, it looked almost beautiful, a dark carpet spreading across the purple forests and silver meadows, leaving nothing but gray dust in its wake. The cities were already gone. The capital had fallen on the second day, had watched the great spires of the Academy of Light collapse as millions of drones swarmed through the streets. Her daughter had been in that city, her too. She had seen their home district consumed in real time on the orbital feeds. There had been no communication since, no final message, no goodbye. Bioluminescence had gone dark days ago. She no longer had the emotional strength to generate light. She was hollow inside, a shell filled with nothing but grief. Elder, a young voice interrupted her mourning. There is something happening. The sensors are detecting anomalies at the system's edge. Did not turn from the window. More swarm ships, probably. They always bring reinforcements when they find a rich world. No, Elder. These readings are different. The energy signatures do not match any profile. Station Commander is calling all senior staff to the observation deck. For the first time in days, felt something other than despair. Curiosity flickered weakly in her chest. She followed the young aide through the crowded corridors of the shelter, passing thousands of survivors who sat in silence or wept quietly in corners. The air smelled of fear and unwashed bodies. Children clung to parents who had no comfort to give. The observation deck was crowded when she arrived. Commander stood at the main display, his bioluminescence flickering rapidly with agitation. Around him, technical staff worked frantically at their consoles. "What is happening?" asked. Commander turned to her and his expression made her stop cold. He looked terrified. Not the slow terror of watching the swarm consume their world. This was something sharp and immediate. "We received a transmission from the monitoring station at Serenity's watch," he said. "Ambassador Eth has sent help." The compact finally mobilized a fleet. "No," his voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Not the compact, the humans." The word fell like a stone into still water. Silence rippled through the observation deck, felt her heart skip in their rhythm. Thus she breathed. "That is impossible. They are quarantined. They would never." "They are coming," pointed at the display. 12 ships. They entered the system boundary 4 minutes ago. At their current speed, they will reach our orbit in approximately 2 hours. 12 ships, repeated the number slowly. Against the swarm, that is suicide. "I thought so too, but look at the sensor data." Studied the display. The readings made no sense. The energy output from those 12 vessels was enormous, far beyond what ships of that size should be able to generate. Their approach vector was aggressive, almost reckless. They were not trying to hide or maneuver defensively. They were heading straight for the planet at maximum speed. "What kind of ships are those?" someone asked. "Unknown configuration," a technician replied. "The hull composition does not match any database entries. The weapons signatures are." She paused, rechecking her readings. "This cannot be right. These power levels would indicate weapons capable of cracking a small moon." "They are warships," said quietly. "True warships, not the defense vessels we build for peacekeeping, machines designed for one purpose." She had read the historical records about humanity. All learned about these as children, part of the standard education about galactic dangers. The humans had spent most of their existence fighting each other. They had developed weapons of terrible power. They had refined the art of killing to a degree that no other species could match. And now they were here. The next 2 hours passed in tense silence. The survivors gathered at every observation port, watching the stars for any sign of the approaching fleet. The swarm continued its work below, oblivious to the threat racing toward it. Clouds of spores rose from the consumed lands, spreading the biomass to new territories. In another few days, the entire planet would be covered. Then the stars bent. Had never seen anything like it. Space itself seemed to twist, reality folding in ways that hurt to look at. The human ships did not simply arrive. They tore through the fabric of normal space like predators bursting through underbrush. The transition was violent, aggressive, a statement of intent. 12 vessels emerged from the distortion. They were black, angular things covered in sharp edges and weapon ports. No curves, no elegance. They looked like they had been designed by beings who saw beauty only in efficiency and lethality. The lead ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of any compact vessel had ever seen. Its hull was and pitted, marked by old battles. This was not a new ship. This was a veteran, a survivor of conflicts that they could not imagine. "By the light," Commander whispered. "Those are not ships. Those are weapons with engines attached." A communication signal burst through every channel in the system. The voice that spoke was female, calm, and utterly without fear. "Survivors, this is Admiral of the Terran Republic Navy. We received your SOS. Remain in orbit. Do not interfere. We will handle this." The message repeated twice, and then the human fleet began to move. They did not hesitate. They did not pause to assess the situation or wait for confirmation. The 12 ships split into 4 groups of 3 and dove toward the planet at speeds that should have been impossible. Sensor alarms screamed as the tracking system struggled to keep up. "They are heading for the swarm concentrations," a technician reported. "All 4 groups are targeting different continents simultaneously." "What are they planning?" asked. "Ground assault, orbital bombardment." As if in answer, the lead ship opened fire. Had seen weapons before. They maintained a small defense fleet, and she had witnessed training exercises where plasma bursts streaked across the void. Those weapons were designed to disable and deter. They were tools of last resort, used only when all other options had failed. What the humans unleashed was something else entirely. Beams of concentrated energy lanced down from orbit, cutting through the atmosphere like knives through silk. Where they struck the swarm biomass, explosions bloomed. Not small explosions, massive detonations that vaporized square kilometers of infected terrain in single strikes. The shock waves were visible from space, rippling outward across the dying land. But that was just the beginning. The other ships began deploying something. Thousands of small objects fell from their hulls, streaking toward the surface like a metal rain. Zoomed in with the observation port's magnification systems and felt her heart stop. Drop pods, troop transports. The humans were landing soldiers. "That is madness," said. "No ground force can survive against the swarm. The drones number in the trillions. They will be overwhelmed in minutes." "I do not think the humans agree with your assessment," replied quietly. She watched the drop pods fall. Thousands of them, each one carrying human warriors directly into the heart of the infestation. It was the most aggressive military deployment she had ever witnessed. No caution, no hesitation, just a direct, brutal assault on an enemy that had never been defeated. A new voice came through the communication system. It was rougher than the Admiral's, colored with an accent did not recognize. "Sanctuary 7, this is Sergeant Major. I am attaching to your station as liaison, opening your docking bay now." Sputtered with surprise, "Opening our what?" But the docking bay was already cycling. Someone, the humans presumably, had their security systems without apparent effort. Minutes later, a small shuttle detached from one of the warships and glided smoothly into the shelter's bay. When to meet it, she did not know why. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was the need to do something, anything, other than watch helplessly. When the shuttle's hatch opened, she got her first look at a living human. Sergeant Major was tall by standards, nearly 2 meters of solid muscle wrapped in black combat armor. Her skin was dark brown, her hair cropped close to her skull. A scar ran down the left side of her face from temple to jaw, pale against the darker skin. Her eyes were the most striking feature, bright and alert, constantly scanning, assessing, cataloging threats. She moved like a predator. Every step was measured, efficient, wasting no energy. When she looked at, the elder felt a primal urge to flee that she had not experienced since childhood. "Elder," the human said. Her voice was surprisingly gentle, given her appearance. "I've been briefed on your situation. I'm here to keep you informed about the operation and ensure your survivors remain safe." "You know my name." "We know a lot about you." His lips curved into what might have been a smile. "We've been watching the compact for 300 years. Not much else to do when you're stuck in one system." Felt a chill run through her body. 3 centuries of observation. 3 centuries of learning and preparing. The humans had been studying the galaxy all this time, waiting for their moment. Your ships said. Your soldiers, they are attacking the swarm directly. That has never been done successfully. First time for everything. They have consumed hundreds of worlds. No force has ever pushed them back. Your people will die. His expression shifted. The gentle facade fell away, revealing something harder beneath. Some of us will die. That's what soldiers do. But we'll take a hell of a lot more of them with us than they expect. How can you be so certain? The human turned to look out the observation port. Below them, the battle had begun in earnest. Explosions dotted the surface like flowering stars. The orbital bombardment continued without pause, methodically destroying swarm concentrations while the ground forces pushed forward. You've read about Earth, right? Asked Our. Yes, a Class 12. Extreme gravity, hostile climate, aggressive fauna. That's the official classification. Here's what it actually means. The sergeant major's voice grew quiet, almost reflective. Every creature on Earth evolved to fight, everything. The plants are poisonous. The insects carry diseases. The animals hunt and kill each other constantly. And we humans, we climb to the top of that pyramid by being the most stubborn, most adaptable, most violent species on the planet. She turned back to, your people see the swarm as an unstoppable force of nature, something that cannot be resisted. We look at them and see prey. Prey could not keep the disbelief from her voice. They are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Dangerous, sure, but predictable. They consume, they spread. They don't adapt, don't change tactics, don't learn from their mistakes. They're basically just really big locusts. Shrugged. We've dealt with locusts before. The observation deck shook as something massive exploded on the planet below. Turned to see one of the swarm hive structures, a mountain-sized organic construct that served as a regional command node, collapsing in flames. Human ships circled above it, pouring fire into the wreckage until nothing remained but ash. That was a hive node, whispered. They have never been destroyed before. First of many. Checked a device on her wrist. Admiral has authorized the deployment of the 3rd Orbital Drop Battalion, meanest sons of bitches in the entire Republic military. Why do you call them that? Smile returned, but this time it was fierce, almost feral. Because that's exactly what they're about to do. Watch. On the surface of Minor, in the ruins of what had once been the city of, the first wave of human Marines touched down. Their drop pods carved craters into the infected ground, and the soldiers emerged already firing. From her position in orbit could not see the details of the ground battle, but she could see the results. The swarm's advance slowed. Then it stopped. Then, impossibly, it began to reverse. The biomass is retreating, a technician reported, voice shaking with disbelief. In Sector 7, in Sector 12, across the entire northern continent, the swarm is pulling back. Impossible, Commander said. They have never retreated, never. They have now. Watched the tactical display with satisfaction. First lesson of dealing with humans, we don't know when to quit. The swarm is used to enemies that break and run. We're the opposite. The harder you push us, the harder we push back. Stared at the display. The impossible was happening right before her eyes. The swarm that had consumed her world, that had killed billions of her people, was being driven back by a force of mere thousands. How many soldiers did you deploy? She asked. First wave, about 50,000, more on the way. 50,000, against trillions of drones. Quality over quantity, tapped her armor. This suit can take hits that would vaporize your soldiers. Our weapons fire rounds that explode inside targets. Our Marines have been training for combat since they were old enough to walk. And more importantly, she paused, looking at the battle below with an expression that could not read. We're really, really angry. Angry. You sent us an SOS. You told us children were dying, that there was a species out here eating bobbies. The sergeant major's voice hardened. That's the one thing you don't do. You don't hurt kids, not in front of humans, because when you do that, you make this personal. And when it's personal, we don't stop, we don't negotiate, we don't accept surrender, we end you. Felt a shiver run through her body. The cold certainty in the human's voice was more frightening than anything the swarm had done. They killed because they were hungry. It was their nature, as impersonal as a natural disaster. The humans were choosing to do this. They had crossed the galaxy, deployed their forces, and engaged an enemy that had never been defeated, not for profit or territory, but because children were dying. "Your admiral said slowly, she said you would handle this. What does that mean exactly?" Was quiet for a long moment. Below them, the battle raged. Human ships continued their bombardment. Ground forces pushed deeper into swarm territory. The biomass burned. "It means exactly what it sounds like," the sergeant major finally answered. "We're not here to save your planet, Elder. That's just the first step." The first step toward what? Turned to face her fully. In the harsh light of the observation deck, her eyes gleamed with something that made take an involuntary step backward. "The swarm attacked a world under our protection, killed innocents, ate children. That's a debt that needs to be paid." She gestured at the viewport. This is just the beginning. When we're done here, we're going to track the swarm to wherever they came from. We're going to find their breeding grounds, their queens, and we're going to burn every last one of them out of existence." "You mean to commit genocide?" "I mean to make sure this never happens again, to anyone." His voice was flat, without emotion. "The swarm has been preying on this galaxy for 10,000 years. They've eaten hundreds of worlds, trillions of lives, and the Compact just let them, ran away, hoped they wouldn't come back." She shook her head slowly. "That's not how humans deal with predators. When a wolf attacks your village, you don't just chase it off. You hunt it down, you find its pack, and you make sure it can never threaten anyone ever again." The observation deck fell silent. The other survivors had gathered around, listening to the human speak. Their bioluminescence flickered with a complex mixture of emotions: fear, hope, horror, gratitude. Elder looked out at her burning world. 6 days ago, she had been ready to die. She had watched everything she loved consumed by an enemy she could not fight. She had lost her daughter, her entire community. She had been hollow, empty, waiting for the end. Now the had come, and they were not just fighting the swarm, they were winning. For the first time since the attack began, allowed herself to feel hope. It was a strange hope, tinged with fear and uncertainty. The humans were terrifying in their own way. Their casual discussion of genocide, their obvious comfort with violence, their cold efficiency, these things disturbed her deeply. But they had come when called. They had answered an SOS from a species that had kept them imprisoned for 3 centuries, and they were doing what no one else in the galaxy could do. They were fighting back. Sergeant Major said quietly, "Thank you for coming, for helping us." Nodded, her expression softening slightly. "Don't thank us yet. We've got a lot of work to do before this is over. But I promise you this, Elder, the swarm will never hurt your people again. Not while there's a human alive to stop them." It was not a comforting promise. It was not the kind of reassurance that had hoped to hear, but it was honest. And in that moment, honesty was worth more than comfort. The battle for Minor had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. The had existed for 100,000 cycles. It had consumed 347 worlds. It had absorbed the biological material of 812 species. In all that time, across all those conflicts, it had never encountered anything like this. The small creatures fell from the sky in metal shells. When the shells opened, the creatures emerged firing weapons that tore through drone bodies with terrible efficiency. They directed its forces against them, sending waves of warriors to overwhelm the invaders through sheer numbers. This tactic had worked on every world before. No species could stand against the endless tide of the swarm. But these creatures did not behave like the others. They did not flee when surrounded. They did not break when their comrades fell. They fought harder, moved faster, killed more efficiently as the battle wore on, and they made sounds that they did not understand. Sharp, barking sounds that seemed to pass between them even in the chaos of combat. Some of the creatures were actually smiling as they fought. The probed deeper into the conflict, trying to understand. It sent sensory drones to observe the invaders closely. What it learned disturbed the vast consciousness in ways it had never experienced. These creatures enjoyed the killing. Not in the way the swarm enjoyed consuming. That was simply biological satisfaction, the pleasure of feeding. This was something else. The invaders fought with a fierce joy, as if the violence itself brought them happiness. They shouted challenges at the drone warriors. They laughed when they destroyed hive nodes. One of them had painted symbols on his armor, counting the kills like trophies. The hat absorbed the memories of countless species. It understood fear, despair, and hopeless resistance. It understood the desperate fury of cornered prey, but it did not understand this. These creatures had chosen to come here. They had traveled across the stars specifically to fight the swarm, and they were having fun. Something alien stirred in this vast consciousness. After 100,000 cycles of absolute dominance, of consuming everything in its path, the hive mind felt something new. Uncertainty. Lieutenant slammed a fresh magazine into his rifle and immediately put 3 rounds through the skull of a charging drone. The creature's head exploded in a spray of green ichor, and its body collapsed at his feet. "Contact left," he shouted, pivoting to engage a new wave of attackers. His squad moved with practiced precision, covering fire lanes and overlapping fields of death. They had been fighting for 6 hours straight, and they were just getting warmed up. The streets were unrecognizable. The beautiful alien architecture had been consumed by swarm biomass, transformed into twisted organic structures that pulsed with hideous life. The ground itself was soft and yielding, covered in the same gray matter that had swallowed the rest of the planet. His boots squelched with each step. He tried not to think about what he was walking on. "Sergeant, we've got movement in Building 4, Private reported through the comm. "Looks like a nest cluster, maybe 200 drones." "Light it up." Raised her grenade launcher and put 3 incendiary rounds through the building's entrance. The subsequent explosion sent a pillar of flame shooting skyward, and the screams of burning drones filled the air. Felt no satisfaction in the sound. These things had killed billions of innocent people. They deserved far worse than fire. His squad pushed forward, clearing block by block. They were part of a larger operation to secure the city center, creating a safe zone for evacuation operations. Other units were doing the same across the planet, establishing beachheads in the ruins of civilization. "Lieutenant, I've got something here." Corporal Obi's voice was strange, quiet. "You need to see this." Moved to the corporal's position, a collapsed structure that might once have been a school. The walls were covered in the intricate patterns that children had painted, now stained with blood and biomass. In the corner, hidden beneath a pile of debris, he found what Obi had discovered. A child barely more than a meter tall. Her bioluminescent skin flickered weakly, pulsing with terror. She was alive, but only barely. One of her arms was gone, consumed by the swarm. The wound had been cauterized somehow, sealing the infection, but she had clearly been hiding here for days. Felt something cold settle in his chest. He had seen death. He had killed more times than he could count. But something about this small, broken creature made his hands shake with rage. "It's okay," he said softly, kneeling beside her. The translator in his helmet converted his words into speech. "You're safe now. We're here to help." The child's 4 eyes focused on him. She should have been terrified. He was a monster from a nightmare world, covered in blood and carrying weapons of destruction. But instead of fear, he saw something else in her gaze. "Hope." "You came," she whispered. "The lights in the sky, they said they would come." "That's right, we came." Removed his helmet slowly, showing his face. My name is what's your name? The. I need you to be very brave. We're going to get you out of here, but first I need to make sure you're safe. Can you walk? The child tried to stand and immediately collapsed. Caught her, supporting her weight easily. She weighed almost nothing. Obi, form a protective perimeter. We're moving this child to the point. Lieutenant, our orders are to secure the city center, said carefully. Command wants us at the objective in 20 minutes. Met her eyes, his expression left no room for argument. Command can wait. We're not leaving children behind. Ever, now move. The squad formed around and his precious cargo, weapons outward, scanning for threats. They moved through the ruined streets at careful speed, clearing corners and checking intersections. The swarm pressed against them constantly, sensing the living warmth of the child, but the Marines held the line. Clung to his neck with her remaining arm. Her bioluminescence was growing stronger, responding to the presence of protectors. She had been alone in the dark for so long, certain that death was coming. Now strange creatures from another world were carrying her to safety, killing anything that tried to hurt her. Are you really from the death world? She asked quietly. Yes, Earth, it's very far from here. Is it true that everything on your planet wants to kill you? Almost laughed. It was such an innocent question asked with such serious curiosity. Not everything. We have beautiful things too. Forests and oceans and mountains covered in snow. But yes, a lot of things are dangerous. Then how did you survive? We got tougher, smarter, meaner when we needed to be. He shifted her weight, keeping his rifle ready. The universe throws problems at you. You can either give up or fight back. Humans chose to fight. They reached the point, a cleared plaza where medical teams had established a temporary station. Survivors were already being treated there, dozens of them, pulled from the ruins by Marine rescue teams. A medic rushed forward as approached. Pediatric case, severe trauma to the left arm. She's been in shock for days. Get her stable and on the next shuttle to the orbital shelters. The medic took a gently, already beginning treatment. The child's eyes stayed on as she was carried away. Thank you, she called out. Thank you for coming. Watched her go. Then he turned back to his squad and reloaded his rifle. Let's get back to work. High above the battle, Admiral watched the tactical display on the bridge of the unconditional surrender. The operation was proceeding better than expected. Human casualties were within acceptable parameters, and the swarm was in full retreat across 60% of the planet's surface. But was not satisfied. What's the status on the hive node in Sector 15? She asked. Marine units are encountering heavy resistance, her XO reported. The swarm is concentrating defensive forces around that location. It appears to be a command center of some kind. A command center implies a commander, studied the display. That has to be coordinating its forces from somewhere. If we can identify the central nexus, we can end this faster. Ma'am, the is distributed across the entire swarm. Destroying one nexus won't kill it. No, but it will hurt it. And when something hurts you, you make mistakes. Turn to her communications officer. Get me I want their commander on the line. Minutes later, the grizzled face of Colonel Stone appeared on her screen. Stone was a legend in the Republic military. 3 decades of combat experience, more confirmed kills than anyone in active service, and a reputation for accomplishing the impossible. Admiral, he said, my people are having a good time down here. What do you need? There's a hive node in Sector 15. Intelligence suggests it's a major coordination point for swarm forces in this hemisphere. I want it destroyed. Stone grinned. It was not a pleasant expression. Destroyed, ma'am, or erased. I want there to be nothing left. No biomass, no structure, no evidence that it ever existed. And Colonel, I want the swarm to watch it happen. I want them to see what we can do. Understood, we'll handle it personally. The transmission ended and returned her attention to the battle. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, coordinating the complex dance of orbital bombardment and ground operations. This was what humans did better than anyone: organized violence on an industrial scale. Her XO moved to stand beside her. "Ma'am, if I may ask, why are we doing this?" "Doing what?" "This, all of this." He gestured at the display. "They aren't our people. The Compact has treated us like dangerous animals for 3 centuries. We have no obligation to help them." Was quiet for a moment. It was a fair question. Many humans had asked the same thing when the SOS came in. Why should they risk their lives for species that feared and rejected them? "Lieutenant Commander, do you have children?" she finally asked. "2 daughters, ma'am, 7 and 9. Imagine something came to Earth and started eating them. Imagine you called for help and no one came. Everyone was too afraid, too weak, too selfish to stand up and fight." His voice hardened. "That's what happened to they're not warriors. They're artists and scientists and teachers. They couldn't fight back. They had no one." She turned to face him directly. "We have spent 300 years being called monsters, the galaxy's boogeyman. Today we prove them wrong. We're not monsters, we're protectors. We're the ones who answer the call when everyone else runs away. And when this is over, when the Compact sees what we're capable of, then they'll have a choice. They can keep fearing us or they can trust us. Either way, they will know the truth." Looked back at the display, at the planet they were fighting to save. "Humans don't abandon people in need. That's not who we are." The XO nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am, I understand." "Good, now let's finish this." On the surface, Colonel Stone led his personal unit toward Sector 15. They were 60 Marines, the most experienced soldiers in the battalion. They had fought on 12 worlds and never lost an engagement. The swarm had no idea what was coming. The hive node was massive, an organic structure rising 300 meters into the air, pulsing with sickly green light. Thousands of drones swarmed around it, creating a defensive perimeter that would have stopped any normal force. Stone studied it through his helmet's tactical display. "Pretty big target." "Orders are to erase it, sir," his second-in-command reminded him. "Yeah, I heard," Stone smiled. "Let's give them a proper introduction to human hospitality." The attack began with precision strikes from orbit, weakening the outer defenses. Then the Marines moved in, a wedge of armored death cutting through drone ranks. Stone was at the point, his heavy rifle singing a continuous song of destruction. Drones fell by the dozens, then the hundreds. They reached the base of the hive node in 12 minutes. Stone planted the demolition charges personally, enough high explosives to level a small city. The swarm threw everything it had at them, trying to stop the humans from completing their mission. Marines fell, dragged down by sheer numbers, but their brothers and sisters filled the gaps and kept fighting. "Charges set," Stone announced. "All units fall back to safe distance." The retreat was orderly despite the chaos. Marines pulled back in stages, covering each other, never breaking formation. When they reached minimum safe distance, Stone triggered the detonation. The explosion was visible from orbit. The hive node ceased to exist, not destroyed, vaporized. A mushroom cloud of fire and debris rose into the sky, blotting out the sun. For kilometers around, the swarm biomass burned. The shock wave flattened everything in its path. And somewhere in the vast network of this consciousness, a scream of pain echoed through the hive. Elder watched the explosion from Sanctuary 7. The flash was bright enough to leave afterimages in her vision. When the light faded, a massive crater marked the spot where the hive node had stood. "What was that?" she breathed. Sergeant Major stood beside her, arms crossed. "That was a message." "A message?" "To the swarm, to the galaxy, to everyone watching." The human's voice was grim. "We don't play defense. When you attack us, when you hurt the people under our protection, we hit back harder. We don't stop until the threat is eliminated." You destroyed an entire district. The devastation would have happened anyway. The swarm had consumed everything in that area. There was nothing left to save, turn to face. But now there's nothing left of them either. And more importantly, the knows what we're willing to do. Another transmission came through the station speakers. Admiral's voice, broadcast on all frequencies. Attention swarm forces. This is Admiral of the Terran Republic Navy. You have attacked a world under our protection. You have killed innocent civilians. You have consumed children. This ends now. The transmission continued, cold and precise. We are offering you one chance. Withdraw from this system immediately. Take your biomass, your drones, your hive ships, and leave. Never return to space. Never threaten any world under our protection again. A pause. If you refuse, we will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy. We will destroy every hive, every breeding ground, every trace of your existence. We will not stop until the swarm is a memory. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Felt her heart's pounding. The ultimatum was unprecedented. No one had ever spoken to the swarm this way. No one had ever been in a position to make such demands. Will they accept? She asked. Shook her head, doubted. The doesn't understand surrender. It only knows consumption, but that's not really the point. Then what is? The point is that we gave them a choice. We're not butchers, we don't kill for pleasure, but if they force our hand, the sergeant major's expression darkened. Then what happens next is on them. Below, on the surface of Minor, the battle continued. But something had changed. The swarm's attacks were less coordinated, more desperate. There was reeling from the destruction of its hive node, struggling to reorganize its forces. And the humans pressed forward, relentless, unstoppable. In the ruins of, Lieutenant's squad had linked up with other Marine units to form a larger assault force. They pushed through streets that were slowly being cleared of biomass, liberating survivors from hiding places throughout the city. Most of the survivors were in terrible condition, wounded, starving, traumatized, but they were alive. And when they saw the human Marines, when they understood that help had finally arrived, their bioluminescence blazed with pure gratitude. Had lost count of how many people they had saved. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Each one was a victory, a small piece of light reclaimed from the darkness. Lieutenant, Private called out, we've got a signal from command. The swarm is pulling back. Pulling back to where? Off planet, sir. They're abandoning the surface and retreating to their hive ships in orbit. Felt a surge of triumph. They had done it. They had actually pushed the swarm off a world. For the first time in recorded history, they were running. Don't celebrate yet, Colonel Stone's voice came through the comm. They're not surrendering. They're regrouping, preparing to flee to another system and start over. Orders, sir. There was a long pause. When Stone spoke again, his voice was hard as iron. Admiral says we're not letting them run. The fleet is moving to intercept. Ground forces are to secure the remaining population centers and begin full evacuation procedures. The Navy will handle the rest. Looked up at the sky, where human ships burned through the atmosphere in pursuit of the retreating swarm. He thought about the little girl he had carried to safety. He thought about all the children the swarm had consumed on this world and countless others. Give them hell, Navy, he whispered. Above Minor, the hunt had begun. The swarm fled through the void between stars, and the humans followed. For 6 days, the pursuit continued across 3 systems. The hive ships were fast, their organic engines pushing them through space at speeds that few vessels could match. They had escaped countless enemies before, always running when the odds turned against them, always returning later to finish consuming their prey. But they had never faced an enemy that refused to stop chasing. Admiral stood on the bridge of the unconditional surrender, watching the tactical display as her fleet closed the distance. The swarm had split into multiple groups, trying to scatter and escape in different directions. She had split her own forces to match, sending hunting packs after each fragment. "Status report," she ordered. "Task Force Alpha has engaged the Western Cluster. Commander Park reports heavy resistance but is making progress. Task Force Gamma is pursuing the northern group toward the dead zone. They should intercept in approximately 4 hours." Her XO paused. "The main swarm body is heading for the system. That's where the bulk of this consciousness is concentrated." "Then that's where we're going," studied the display. "How many hive ships are we talking about?" 17 confirmed, with an estimated biomass capable of regenerating the entire swarm within a decade. If they escape, everything we've done here means nothing. "They won't escape." His voice left no room for doubt. "All ships, maximum burn. I want us in weapons range within 36 hours. The fleet accelerated. The crews had been operating at combat readiness for over a week, catching sleep in shifts, eating at their stations. Exhaustion was setting in, but no one complained. They all knew what was at stake. In the crew quarters, Marines cleaned weapons and tended wounds. The ground forces had been recalled from Minor once the evacuation was complete, loaded onto transport ships that now traveled in the fleet's protective shadow. They had lost 237 soldiers in the liberation. Each name had been recorded, each sacrifice remembered. Lieutenant sat alone in the mess hall, staring at a cup of cold coffee. He had not slept properly in days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the ruins of the bodies half consumed by biomass, the empty eyes of children who had died in terror. "Ande?" The little girl with one arm, looking at him like he was some kind of savior. "You should eat something," a voice said. Looked up to find Sergeant Major settling into the seat across from him. She looked as tired as he felt, but her eyes were sharp and alert. "Not hungry," he replied. "Doesn't matter, you need fuel, we're not done yet." She pushed a ration pack across the table. "The Admiral is planning to end this. The whole swarm, Lieutenant. Every last one of them." "Good," the word came out flat without emotion. "They deserve it." Studied him for a long moment. "What's eating at you? And don't say nothing. I've been doing this for 30 years. I know the look." Was quiet. Then slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a piece of painted stone, covered in colorful patterns. He had found it in the rubble of the school where they discovered a kid made this, he said. Some child, probably not much older than 6 or 7 by human standards. They spent hours painting these little patterns, making something beautiful for their family or their teacher. His grip tightened on the stone, and then something came from the sky and ate them alive. "War is ugly," said softly. "That's why we fight to end it quickly." "It's not that. I've seen war. I've seen terrible things," met her eyes. "What bothers me is that this has been happening for 10,000 years. 10,000 years, Sergeant Major. The swarm has been doing this to worlds across the galaxy and no one stopped them. The Compact just ran away and hoped they wouldn't be next. The Compact is afraid of war. They've built their whole society around avoiding conflict. And how many children died because of that fear? How many as hiding in rubble waiting for help that never came?" His voice cracked. "We were there, in our system, watching. We could have helped centuries ago if they had let us." Nodded slowly. "You're angry at the Compact." "I'm angry at everyone. At the swarm for being monsters, at the Compact for being cowards, at ourselves for sitting in our cage when we could have been out here making a difference." He looked at the painted stone again. "This kid should be alive, playing with friends, learning how to paint better patterns. Instead, they're nothing but organic matter in the belly of some drone. And that's why we're here now," leaned forward. "To make sure it never happens again. The Admiral's orders are clear. We're not stopping until the swarm is extinct. Every hive ship, every breeding pool, every trace of their existence. We're going to hunt them down and burn them out." "Is that justice or genocide? Does the difference matter?" Considered the question. In the abstract, it was a philosophical debate about the ethics of exterminating an entire species. In practice, with the memory of dead children fresh in his mind, it felt much simpler. "No," he said finally, "I don't think it does." They had never known fear. For 100,000 cycles, it had been the apex predator of the galaxy. It consumed, it grew, it spread. Nothing could stop it. Nothing could threaten it. The concept of fear was something it understood only through the memories of its prey. Now it understood firsthand. The human ships pursued with relentless determination. Every time the swarm tried to scatter, the hunters split to follow. Every time the sacrificed a portion of itself to slow the pursuit, the humans destroyed the sacrifice and kept coming. They did not tire. They did not hesitate. They tracked the swarm across the void like predators following a blood trail. And they were getting closer. They gathered the remnants of its consciousness in the 17 hive ships that represented the core of its being. These vessels contained the breeding chambers, the genetic libraries, the accumulated knowledge of countless consumed civilizations. If they survived, the swarm could rebuild. It would take decades, perhaps centuries, but they was patient. But the humans were not giving it that chance. In desperation, they attempted something it had never done in its existence. It reached out with its consciousness, seeking to communicate with its pursuers. Perhaps these creatures could be reasoned with. Perhaps they wanted something that could be given. The message went out across all frequencies. Not words, they had no concept of language but patterns, impressions, offers. Territory, the humans could have worlds, dozens of them, hundreds, systems rich with resources, free from swarm interference forever. Tribute, they would provide biological samples, genetic material, anything the humans desired. It would never again threaten any world the humans claimed. Submission. For the first time in 100,000 cycles, they offered to bend, to acknowledge another species as superior, to retreat into the dark spaces between galaxies and never return. Admiral received the transmission on the bridge of her flagship. She listened to the specialist's interpretation of the alien patterns, their analysis of what they was trying to say. "It's scared," she said finally, "genuinely terrified. It's offering us everything it has." "Ma'am, some of these offers are substantial," her XO noted. "If we accepted, we could gain significant territory and resources. The swarm would be effectively contained." "Contained," repeated the word like it was poison. "Until we let our guard down, until they rebuild their numbers, until they find another world full of children to eat." She shook her head. "No, this ends now." She keyed the communication system. "This is Admiral. I understand your offers. I have considered them carefully." She paused, letting the words sink in. "You came to a world of innocent people, artists and teachers and children. You killed them for food. You consumed billions of souls without hesitation or remorse. And now that you're losing, you want to negotiate." Her voice hardened into something cold and final. "No, you don't get to negotiate. You don't get to surrender. You don't get to continue existing. You've been preying on this galaxy for 10,000 years. That ends today. We are coming for you, and we will not stop until every last trace of your kind is ash." She cut the transmission. "All ships, maximum attack speed. I want us in weapons range in 12 hours. The fleet surged forward. 12 human warships against 17 hive vessels, each one the size of a small moon. By any reasonable calculation, it was suicide. The swarm still outnumbered them enormously in raw biomass. They could generate millions of drones, swarm them with organic missiles, overwhelm them through sheer weight of numbers. But the humans had something the swarm did not understand. They had technology refined through of warfare against each other. They had weapons designed to kill efficiently and completely. And they had a rage that burned cold and deep, a determination that would not be broken. The battle of system lasted 6 hours. The swarm threw everything it had at the human fleet. Drones by the millions, organic torpedoes, corrosive boarding parties. The human ships took damage. Armor plating melted. Weapon systems failed. Crew members died at their stations. But they kept fighting. Admiral directed the battle from the center of the chaos, her voice calm and steady as she issued orders. Each ship knew its role. Each captain executed with precision. They worked together like a single organism, far more coordinated than the swarm had ever expected. The hive ships died one by one. The unconditional surrender destroyed 3 of them personally, its main batteries tearing through organic hulls like paper. The smaller vessels in the fleet focused on the remaining ships, coordinating their fire to maximize damage. When one human ship was disabled, another moved to cover it, maintaining the integrity of the formation. By the end of the 4th hour, half the hive ships were debris. By the 5th hour, only 5 remained. The was in agony. Each destroyed hive ship took pieces of its consciousness with it. Memories accumulated over vanished in nuclear fire. Genetic lineages stretching back 100,000 cycles were erased in moments. The vast mind that had once spanned the galaxy was shrinking, fragmenting, dying. In its final moments, the understood something it had never grasped before. It understood what it felt like to be prey. The last 5 hive ships clustered together, trying to mount a final defense. Admiral studied them on her tactical display, noting the desperate concentration of drones around the largest vessel. "That one," she said, pointing. "That's where the primary consciousness is housed. Take it out and the rest will fall." "We're down to 40% weapons capacity, ma'am," her XO reported. "Half our fleet has sustained significant damage." "I don't care if we're down to 1 ship. In a harsh word, we finish this," keyed the fleet-wide channel. "All vessels, concentrate fire on the central hive ship. Everything you've got. This is it." The human fleet attacked. Missiles streaked through the void. Energy beams stabbed through darkness. The swarm defenders threw themselves against the assault with mindless fury, trying to absorb the damage, trying to protect their. It was not enough. The central hive ship came apart slowly, like a dying animal. First, the outer sections ruptured, spilling biomass into space. Then the inner chambers cracked, exposing the breeding pools and genetic archives to hard vacuum. Finally, the core itself, the vast organic brain that housed this consciousness, was pierced by a direct hit from the unconditional surrender's main gun. The died screaming. Its final thoughts were a cascade of confusion and terror. It had existed for so long, consumed so much, grown so vast. It had never imagined that anything could end it. The universe was meant to be food. The stars were meant to be fuel. Everything existed to feed the swarm. And now the swarm was nothing but debris, slowly cooling in the void. The remaining 4 hive ships fell silent as their controlling intelligence vanished. Without the to guide them, the drones became mindless animals, attacking randomly or simply drifting in confusion. The human fleet destroyed them methodically, ensuring that nothing survived. When it was over, Admiral stood on her damaged bridge and looked at the field of debris that had once been the greatest threat in the galaxy. Bodies of drones floated past her viewport. Fragments of hive ships tumbled in the darkness. The last traces of a 100,000-year-old species burned and died in the cold of space. "It's done," her XO said quietly. "The swarm is finished." "Not quite," turned from the viewport. "There are splinter groups we detected earlier, heading for deep space. Small populations, maybe a few thousand drones each. They could rebuild given enough time." "Ma'am, we've just fought the largest naval battle in human history. Our ships are damaged. Our crews are exhausted. Surely." "Surely nothing." His voice was steel. "We made a promise. We said we would end the threat, not reduce it, not contain it, end it." She began issuing orders to her crew. "I want repair crews working around the clock, coordinate with the other task forces. We find every last splinter group, every hidden hive, every trace of swarm DNA. and we burn it all. That could take months, years. Then it takes years. I don't care if it takes a decade. They asked us for help. They trusted us to protect them, and I will not let their trust be misplaced. Over the following weeks, the Terran fleet scattered across the galaxy, hunting the remnants of the swarm. They found hidden colonies in asteroid fields, dormant hives on barren moons, small groups trying to rebuild in systems the Compact had abandoned centuries ago. Each was destroyed, no exceptions, no mercy. Lieutenant was part of the ground teams that landed on suspected swarm hideouts. He cleared nests with methodical efficiency, burning out every trace of biomass they found. The work was exhausting, dangerous, and seemingly endless. But every time he felt his resolve weaken, he thought about the painted stone in his pocket, about all the children who would never have to fear the swarm again. That was worth any amount of effort. Elder received regular reports on the campaign from Sergeant Major, who had been assigned to coordinate with the survivors. Each report described another swarm hideout eliminated, another threat removed. "How long will this take?" asked one day. "As long as necessary," replied. "Admiral is thorough. You are not just defending us, you are exterminating an entire species." "Yes. Does that not trouble you?" Was quiet for a moment. "Elder, before I joined the military, I was a teacher. I worked with children in the areas of my homeland. I watched them learn and grow and dream about their futures." Her voice softened. "I think about those kids when I look at what the swarm did to your world. I think about what would happen if something like that came to Earth." She met's eyes. The swarm chose to be what it was. It chose to consume rather than coexist. It had 10,000 years to change, to find another way, and it never did. So yes, we are exterminating them. And I will sleep perfectly well tonight knowing that no child anywhere will ever be eaten alive by those monsters again. Did not know how to respond. The humans were so strange, capable of such violence, yet driven by something that looked almost like love. They killed without hesitation, but only to protect. They showed no mercy to the swarm, but infinite compassion to its victims. She thought about the Compact's decision to quarantine humanity 3 centuries ago. At the time, it had seemed wise. The humans were dangerous, unpredictable, violent. Better to keep them contained than to risk them turning that violence against civilized species. Now she understood how wrong that thinking had been. The danger was never that humans would attack the innocent. The danger was that they would defend the innocent with a ferocity that the galaxy had never seen. The swarm was gone. They had done what no other species in history could do. And the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Compact Council chamber had not been this full in 300 cycles. Representatives from every member species filled the circular hall, their bodies in containment suits and holographic projections crowding every available space. The air hummed with tension and whispered conversations in dozens of languages. Ambassador Eth stood at the speaker's platform, his bioluminescence steady and strong despite the weight of countless eyes upon him. Behind him, the human delegation waited in silence. Admiral stood at the center, wearing a formal uniform that somehow looked more like armor. Sergeant Major flanked her on one side, Lieutenant on the other. A dozen more human officers stood behind them, faces calm and unreadable. The chamber fell silent as High Counselor and raised her manipulators for attention. She was ancient, nearly 1,000 cycles old, and her voice carried the weight of generations. This emergency session of the Galactic Compact Council has been called to address recent events in space and surrounding systems. She paused, her multiple eyes scanning the assembly. Ambassador Eth has requested to speak. The council will hear him. Eth stepped forward. He had prepared for this moment for weeks, choosing each word carefully. Everything depended on what happened in this room. "Distinguished representatives," he began, 3 cycles ago, Mayav Minor was attacked by the swarm. 12 billion of my people were killed. Our cities were consumed. Our civilization was nearly destroyed. The chamber remained silent. Everyone already knew this. The compact could not help us. Our defense fleets were inadequate. No member species had the capability to fight the swarm directly. In desperation, I made a decision that violated centuries of established protocol. He turned slightly, gesturing toward the humans. I asked them for help. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their places. They came, Eth continued. They did not ask for payment. They did not demand territory or tribute. They simply came and they fought. His voice strengthened. In less than a standard cycle, the humans liberated Minor. They evacuated our survivors. They pushed the swarm off our world. He paused, letting the words sink in. And then they did something that no species in galactic history has ever done. They pursued the swarm across 3 systems. They tracked down every hive ship, every breeding ground, every trace of existence, and they destroyed it all. The chamber erupted. Voices shouted over each other in alarm and disbelief. High Counselor and had to bang her ceremonial staff repeatedly before order was restored. Ambassador Ev, she said carefully, are you claiming that the humans have exterminated the swarm? I am not claiming it, High Counselor. I am reporting it as fact. Ev's bioluminescence pulsed with absolute certainty. The swarm is gone. After 10,000 cycles of terror, after hundreds of consumed worlds and trillions of lost lives, the threat has been permanently eliminated. More murmurs. Some representatives expressed relief. Others showed fear. Many displayed emotions that Eth could not identify. This is genocide, representative of the Methane Collective declared. His gaseous form swirled with agitation. The deliberate extinction of an entire species. Regardless of the swarm's crimes, this is a violation of the most fundamental principles of civilized. Civilized. The word cut through the chamber like a blade. Admiral had stepped forward without waiting for permission to speak. Her voice was not loud, but it silenced the room instantly. Let me tell you about civilization, representative. Walked toward the center of the chamber, her boots clicking on the stone floor. I've read your history. The first appeared in compact records 10,000 cycles ago. In that time, they consumed 347 worlds. 812 species were absorbed. Trillions of sentient beings were eaten alive. She stopped, facing the assembled representatives directly. And what did this civilized compact do? You ran. You abandoned worlds. You drew lines on maps and called them quarantine zones. You let entire civilizations die because you were too afraid to fight. We could not fight, High Counselor responded. Our species are not warriors. We do not have the biological or psychological capacity for. I know. His voice softened slightly, but her eyes remained hard. You're not built for violence. That's not a criticism. The create beautiful art. The Methane Collective produces scientists who have unlocked secrets of the universe. The Silicon Mines have developed technology that humans can barely comprehend. Each of your species contributes something valuable to the galaxy. She looked around the chamber slowly. But none of you could protect the innocent when the monsters came, so we did. Lieutenant stepped forward, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small object, a painted stone covered in colorful patterns. I found this on Minor, he said, his voice quiet but clear. In the ruins of a school, a child made this. They spent hours painting these patterns, probably as a gift for someone they loved. He held up the stone for the assembly to see. That child is dead, eaten by the swarm while the compact debated protocol. He placed the stone on the speaker's platform. We didn't exterminate the swarm because we wanted to. We did it because someone had to. Because children were dying and no one else was willing to do anything about it. The chamber was silent. Eth stepped forward again. Representatives, I understand your concerns. The humans are powerful. What they have done is unprecedented. You look at them and feel fear. I understand that fear. I felt it myself when I first called for their help. He turned to face, then back to the assembly. But I have watched them for the past 3 cycles. I have seen how they fight, and more importantly, I have seen how they treat those they have saved. They did not conquer Minor. They liberated it. They did not demand payment for their services. They asked only that we accept their friendship. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The question before this council is not whether the humans are dangerous. They are. We have all seen proof of that. The question is whether we want them as our enemies or our friends. And what does that mean precisely? Asked Representative Al of the Silicon Mines. What are the humans asking for? Admiral answered, we're asking to end the quarantine, to be recognized as a legitimate member of the galactic community, to have the same rights and responsibilities as any other species. And in return, nothing. We're not asking for territory or tribute. We're not demanding special privileges. Clasped her hands behind her back. We're simply asking to be treated as equals, to trade and communicate and explore alongside everyone else. And if we refuse, Representative asked, if we decide that the risk of allowing free access to the galaxy is too great? Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was carefully neutral. Then we return to our system and continue as before. We won't force ourselves on species that don't want us, but I would ask you to consider something first. She turned slowly, addressing the entire assembly. Right now, somewhere in this galaxy, there is another threat growing. Another species like the swarm gathering strength in the darkness. Maybe it's already attacked worlds in the outer regions. Maybe it's still building its forces, waiting for the right moment. But eventually, inevitably, it will come. Her eyes met N's. When that happens, you can face it alone. You can run like you've always run and hope that the threat passes you by, or you can call for help. And if you call, we will come. We will always come, because that's who we are. She took a step back, returning to her position with the human delegation. The choice is yours. The council debated for 7 hours. Elder watched from the observation gallery, her heart aching with anxiety. She had been invited to attend as a representative of the minor survivors, though she had no vote and no voice in the proceedings. Beside her, Sergeant Major sat in patient silence. The human had barely moved in hours, watching the debate with calm attention. "How can you be so calm?" asked. "Your entire future as a species hangs in the balance." "Not really," replied. "We'll be fine either way. We've survived 3 centuries of isolation. We can survive more if we have to." "But you want to be accepted. I can see it in your Admiral's eyes." "We want to help. That's different," shifted slightly. "Back on Earth, we have a saying, no good deed goes unpunished. We've done something that should be celebrated, ended a threat that terrorized the galaxy but half this council is more afraid of us now than they were of the swarm. Can you blame them? No, we are dangerous. There's no point pretending otherwise, but danger isn't the same as evil. A storm is dangerous. A predator is dangerous. Doesn't mean they're wrong to exist. Consider this. My people tell stories about Earth, tales meant to frighten children. Do not wake they say. Do not anger the monsters from the heavy world. We've heard similar things, smiled slightly. It's funny, actually. Humans tell scary stories about aliens, creatures from other worlds coming to conquer and destroy. And all along, the rest of the galaxy was telling scary stories about us. Your species is rather terrifying. I suppose we are. The smile faded. But we're also the ones who came when you called. Remember that, Elder. Whatever the council decides, remember that when your world was burning and no one else would help, we came. The vote was close. 31 species voted to maintain the quarantine. 29 voted to end it. The remainder abstained, unwilling to commit either way. The quarantine would continue. The humans would be sent back to their system, contained once more behind warning beacons and forbidden borders. Admiral received the news with no visible reaction. She simply nodded, thanked the council for their consideration, and began ordering her delegation to prepare for departure. But before they could leave, a voice rang out across the chamber. "I invoke the right of advocacy." Eth stood alone on the speaker's platform, his bioluminescence blazing with fierce light. The other representatives turned to stare at him in shock. "Ambassador, what are you doing?" High Counselor demanded. "I am invoking my species' right of advocacy, as granted in the original Compact Charter, to formally sponsor humanity for full membership in the Galactic Compact." The chamber erupted again. The right of advocacy was ancient, rarely used, a provision from the earliest days of the Compact that allowed any member species to champion a newcomer. It bypassed the normal voting procedures. It required only that the sponsoring species accept full responsibility for the behavior of their advocates. "You understand what this means?" and asked. "If humanity violates Compact law, they will be held accountable. Your species will bear the consequences of their actions." "I understand completely." Eth's voice rang with certainty. "The humans saved my people. They asked nothing in return. They have earned my trust, and through me, they have earned the trust of every who survived the swarm's attack." He turned to face the assembly. 3 cycles ago, I sent an SOS into the void. I begged for help, and only they answered. They crossed the galaxy to save strangers from a species that had rejected them. If that does not prove their character, nothing will. He looked at Admiral. "I stand for humanity, the stand for humanity. Whatever comes next, we face it together." The chamber fell silent. High Counselor studied the ambassador for a long moment. Then she sighed, a sound that resonated with the weight of centuries. "The right of advocacy has been invoked. According to Compact law, the quarantine must be lifted. Humanity is hereby recognized as a provisional member of the Galactic Compact, under sponsorship." She banged her ceremonial staff. "This session is adjourned." The representatives began to file out, many still murmuring in confusion or concern. But a small group remained behind: the delegation, the human officers, and a handful of other species who had voted for acceptance. Admiral approached Eth. Her expression was strange, something between gratitude and uncertainty. "Ambassador, you didn't have to do that. You've put your entire species at risk for us." "No," Eth replied. "I have put my species at risk for what is right. There is a difference." He extended his hand, a human gesture he had learned specifically for this moment, looked at it for a moment, then took it. Her grip was strong and warm. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for coming when we called." Eth's bioluminescence shifted to gold, the expression of deep affection. "Now, Admiral, let us discuss how we can help your people adjust to their new place in the galaxy." In the weeks that followed, news of the Compact's decision spread across known space. The quarantine was ended. They were loose. Reactions varied. Some species welcomed humanity with open arms, eager to trade and learn from the newcomers. Others reinforced their borders and watched nervously for any sign of human aggression. A few sent diplomatic missions to Sol system, curious to see the nightmare world that had produced such fearsome creatures. Earth received them all graciously. The humans turned out to be surprisingly good hosts, welcoming, curious, eager to share their culture and learn about others. They were still dangerous, still capable of terrible violence, but they were also artists and scientists and dreamers. They built beautiful things and wrote touching poetry and laughed at jokes that made no sense to alien minds. The galaxy began to adjust. Elder traveled to Earth as part of the first cultural exchange. She walked through cities built by billions of humans, marveling at their energy and creativity. She visited the oceans that covered most of the planet, watched storms roll across the sky, felt the heavy gravity pressing down on her fragile body. And everywhere she went, she found humans who remembered what their soldiers had done on Minor. They asked about the survivors. They offered help in rebuilding. They expressed genuine sorrow for those who had been lost. On her last day on Earth, visited a memorial that had been built in a park in the capital city. It was a simple structure, a wall covered with the names of the Marines who had died in the liberation of her world. 237 names, etched in stone. Lieutenant found her there, standing before the wall in silence. He had been assigned as her escort during the cultural exchange, a role he seemed to take very seriously. "They built this in 3 weeks," he said, joining her. "As soon as the bodies were recovered and the families, humans have a thing about remembering our dead." "It is beautiful," replied, "simple and dignified. They volunteered, you know, every single one of them. When Admiral put out the call for the rescue mission, she had to turn away twice as many soldiers as she could take. Everyone wanted to help." Looked at the names. She could not pronounce most of them, unfamiliar sounds from unfamiliar languages, but she understood what they represented. "Why?" she asked. "Why did they volunteer? They did not know us. They had no obligation to help." Was quiet for a moment. "When I was a boy, my grandmother told me a story. She said that the measure of a person isn't what they do for themselves. It's what they do for strangers, for people who can't repay them, for people who might never even know their names." He touched one of the names on the wall, a soldier who had served in his unit, who had died defending a group of children during the evacuation. These people didn't die for glory or profit. They died because somewhere in the galaxy, children were in danger. That's all they needed to know. Felt her bioluminescence shift to deep gold. Gratitude and love, warmth and trust. "Your grandmother was wise." "She was," smiled. "She would have liked you." Later that evening, composed a message to be sent back to the. It would be broadcast to every survivor of the Minor attack, to every citizen who still feared the humans, to every child who had grown up hearing stories about the terrible. The message was simple. "I have walked on the human. I have spoken with their people. I have seen their cities and their art and their monuments to the dead. And I can tell you this with absolute certainty. We have nothing to fear from humanity." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "They are not monsters. They are protectors. They are the shield that stands between innocence and evil. They answer the call when no one else will. They fight the battles that cannot be won, and somehow they win them anyway." Her voice softened. 3 cycles ago our world burned. We screamed into the void begging for help, and they came. They did not ask why. They did not ask for payment. They simply came and they saved us." She looked out the window at the strange, beautiful planet below. "The galaxy feared humanity because of what they could destroy. But I have learned that true measure of a species is not what they can destroy. It is what they will protect. And the humans will protect anyone who asks for help. Anyone at all." She ended the message with a promise. "They are our friends now, our allies, our family, and if the darkness ever comes again, we will face it together, the and the standing side by side." The message spread across the galaxy. Other species heard it and began to wonder. Perhaps they were not the monsters they had always feared. Perhaps there was another way to understand these strange, violent, compassionate creatures. And somewhere in the dark spaces between stars, in the places where terrible things waited and watched, a new kind of fear began to take root. Not the fear of being hunted or consumed, but the fear of something even worse. The fear of facing the humans. Because they had finally been let loose, they had proven what they could do, and they had made their intentions perfectly clear. They answered the call. They always would. And nothing in the galaxy would ever threaten the innocent again. without facing the full fury of the species from the heavy world. The monsters of the void had heard the message. They had delivered their reply. And the galaxy was finally, truly safe.